All right, let's talk about one of the most legendary, most audacious decisions in modern tech history. We're going back to 2013, to a moment that had literally everyone talking. This was a true David versus Goliath story, but, with a multi-billion-dollar price tag.
So this is the number that started it all. $3 billion. And not in stock, no, all cash. That's the insane amount of money that Facebook offered to buy a quirky little disappearing photo app that was, barely 2 years old? This wasn't just an offer, it was a power move. A king trying to scoop up a hottest new thing on the block before it grew into a rival. I mean, really, just stop and think about that for a second. $3 billion. For the founders, their personal take would have been somewhere around $750 million. That's do whatever you want for the rest of your life money. The smart move, the logical play, was to take the cash and pop the champagne. But he didn't do it. Evan Spiegel, who was only 23 years old at the time, basically looked Mark Zuckerberg in the eye and turned down $3 billion. He said he was building something for the long run, not a short-term game. The entire tech world was just floored. And pretty much immediately, everybody had an opinion. As you can imagine, the internet basically split right down the middle. Was this guy a visionary protecting his baby? Or was he a greedy fool who just made the biggest blunder of his entire life? And forums like Reddit, they became the front row seat for this huge debate. So on one side, you had people who were absolutely convinced he'd just blown the opportunity of a lifetime. Like this comment from a Redditor named Daft Wager, who basically said, hey, apps have a short shelf life. They're never going to get an offer like that again. The feeling in this camp was super clear. That was a winning lottery ticket, and Spiegel just tore it up. And that skepticism was really common back then. You had users like Bob Sil1 pointing out that a lot of these tech IPOs felt like a bubble just waiting to pop. For them, taking the guaranteed cash was the only sane thing to do in a world filled with so much hype. But then, you had the other side. This user, Olaf_ from Norway, had a completely different take. They said, for someone who's already rich, maybe it's not about the money. Maybe it's about the challenge, the thrill of building something huge, something that leaves a real legacy. And that same Redditor brought up a super important piece of the backstory here. See, Zuckerberg had already tried to kill Snapchat once before with a total clone app called Poke, and it failed miserably. So turning down this offer, well, it wasn't just a business decision. It was personal. It was the ultimate get stuffed to a rival who had already tried to take you out. So Spiegel says no. He bets on himself. He chooses independence. But what happens when you say no to a company with the power and resources of Facebook? Well, you don't just shake hands and walk away. You've just declared war. This comment from the forums really summed up Facebook's unspoken message perfectly. If we can't buy you, we will bury you. The rejection wasn't the end of the story, not by a long shot. It was just the opening shot in a long, brutal fight for survival. And you can see that war play out right here. First, November 2013, the big no. For the next few years, Snapchat is on fire. It's growing like crazy, and it invents and popularizes the story format that we all know and use today. Then, boom, August 2016, Facebook deploys its biggest weapon, Instagram, and it launches an almost exact copy of Snapchat's best feature and calls it Stories. The message couldn't have been clearer. If we can't buy your innovation, we'll just copy. In that move, right there, kicked off what people now call the Great Social Clone War. Suddenly, those clear lines that used to separate all the different social media apps, they just started to completely disappear. I mean, before all this went down, the two apps lived in totally different universes. Snapchat was all about those spontaneous, raw, goofy messages you'd send to your close friends, mostly for teams. It was designed to disappear. Instagram, on the other hand, was your public photo album. Everything was polished, curated, meant to last forever, and it had a way broader audience. They served totally different needs. But after 2016, Instagram just went on an absolute cloning spree. 24-hour disappearing stories? Yep, we'll take that. Funky filters and stickers to put on your photos? Ours now. They even went after self-deleting direct messages. They systematically copied pretty much every single feature that made Snapchat special, and then used their massive, massive platform to give those ideas a scale that Snapchat could only dream of. So all of that brings us to the real question, doesn't it? Looking back at this whole saga, who actually came out on top? Was Evan Spiegel a genius for saying no?
Well, the truth is, it's kind of complicated. On one hand, Spiegel got what he wanted. Snapchat is still independent and still a powerhouse, especially with younger audiences. But Instagram's counterattack, it was just brutally effective. By pushing stories out to its 600 million plus users, it immediately took over the format, slowed Snapchat's growth right down, and proved that sometimes, in the tech world, sheer size can beat a brand new idea. And that leaves us with this huge, lingering question about how the tech industry really works. By saying no, did Evan Spiegel champion innovation and prove that a startup can stand up to a giant? Or did he just trade an easy payday for a bloody war he was going to have to fight anyway? A war that showed the world how a dominant platform can just copy its competitors' best ideas and maybe scare off the next wave of innovators. It's a decision that didn't just shape two companies. It asked a really fundamental question about what truly wins in tech: the best idea or just the biggest arm.